Hello everyone and welcome to the Horror Homestead. My name is GiBi and today I'm going to be reacting to a video by ID's Fantasy, Golden Freddy's True Identity, FNAF Theory. If you've been watching my videos for the last couple of weeks, you know that I've been bombarded with questions about Dual Process Theory's video about the true identity of Golden Freddy. And you know that I'm very critical of that theory. I've discussed it multiple times now in my Q&A videos. I've had a lot of people asking me my thoughts on it, and when I was critical of the theory, I've had people telling me that I should do a reaction to the 2-hour-long dual process theory video. And I decided not to do that for a couple of reasons. First off is simply that they are a smaller channel, and I felt that cannibalizing their views by reacting to it was not necessarily something that I should participate in. I know that MatPat's doing it, but MatPat has a very, very large audience, and if anything, he's kind of drawing attention to their channel. Basically, I think that there's very few people who watch me who haven't already seen that video, whereas Matt is bringing a new audience to it. The second main reason I didn't want to do it myself is because after the trauma of my very too long FNAF video, I've realized that I cannot trust myself on giving people what I consider to be constructive feedback or playful criticism. Basically, I got many comments on my too long FNAF video saying that I was being very mean to MatPat. And I didn't think I was being very mean to MatPat, so obviously I don't have my finger on the pulse of exactly what people consider to be constructive criticism. I very much am a firm believer in friendly and respectful discourse and discussion. That is, of course, what I say at the end of all of my videos, that Freddy's stands for friendly, respectful discourse and discussion yields success. Or it's friendly, respectful engagement, discussion, and discourse yield success. That's how many letters there are in Freddy's, right? Basically, didn't trust myself to do it, didn't think like that was something that I necessarily needed to do on my channel. But on Twitter, ID's Fantasy has been teasing for a couple days that she's going to make a video breaking down the situation. If you aren't totally aware, this video has blown up, and I'm getting so many comments on my videos, and also seeing comments on other people's videos, where people are saying, this is the greatest FNAF video they've ever seen. This is the amazing truth, these people have finally solved it. And that is very frustrating as somebody who doesn't believe the theory. ID's Fantasy is my favorite of the FNAF theorists. I don't necessarily agree with all of her conclusions, but I think that she has the most solid videos when it comes to FNAF theorizing. Unlike people like myself or MatPat or John FNAF, where we come up with some kooky crazy ideas and then make a video arguing for it because that kind of stuff's fun, I really think that she only puts out videos when she's like solid, when she knows exactly what she wants and how she's going to argue for it. I think that she makes the best FNAF videos. So basically I trust her to tackle this properly. So I'm going to be watching the video, I'm going to be pausing a lot and talking about it, but I have not seen this yet, and I am very excited to see how she does this, and whether or not the community decides to stop holding that video up on a pedestal, because I would very much like it to go away. Not the video, I've said this before, I very much enjoyed the video, and I hope that that channel continues putting out FNAF content. I'm just not happy with the community response to it by basically spamming other FNAF channels and saying, hey, why aren't you talking about this? This is true. Why did you listen to this? So it's not Dual Process Theory's fault. It's the community's fault. It's your fault. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we're going to watch ID Fantasy's video.
Golden Freddy is one of the most important characters in Five Nights at Freddy's, and as a result, there have been quite a few theories about who the spirit or spirits possessing it and what their roles in the story are. However, while some of these theories have been the majority opinion for longer than I've been a fan of the franchise, one recent theory put out by the channel Dual Process Theory suggests that not only are those theories incorrect, but everything we thought about Golden Freddy and its role in the story is completely wrong. From new perspectives on the events of Ultimate Custom Night and the Missing Children incident, to reinterpreting the survival logbook, the co-hosts of the channel, Corey and Connie, bring an interesting new theory to the table. But does that theory hold up? Are they right to say it's time to rethink the lore? Who's really—
Well, I would say, first of all, it's always time to rethink the lore. I like the weird out-of-left-field, out-of-the-box thinking that happens when, especially new people, come into the community to just say stuff, right? Like, I personally believe, I think that the strongest, the only basically confirmed FNAF theory is Molten MCI. I think it's pretty unarguable that that's canon. But Squawks, who's another one of my favorite FNAF-tubers, doesn't believe it, and I think that's a very valuable perspective to have. I like that so far she's being very polite, and once again, she's calling out how amazing these two creators, the Dual Process Theory creators, are. I think I technically don't know what she's going to say, but I do think that she's going to not believe the theory by the end of the video.
Really possessing Golden Freddy, and just what part do they actually play in the timeline? Well, stay tuned and consider subscribing, because I plan to not only answer these questions, but also address how this debate relates to the theorizing community as a whole. First, I want to clarify that I will not be going into this video with the mindset that the Fazbear Frights books are in the game continuity. While the game Into the Pit has reignited debate on the topic, as it is a
I think she's going to lampshade all the Andrew stuff. That's another thing, I'm not going to say it annoys me, but it's another thing I see people making comments about a lot, which is that they're like, oh, Golden Freddy is Andrew. And that is a good conclusion, a logical conclusion to come to, but only if you believe that the books are like game canon, like the events of the Fazbear Frights books actually happen in the game's timeline. And because that is not only not agreed upon, but in fact, I'm pretty sure it would lean in the other direction that they're probably not canon. I get frustrated with people saying that as if it's a fact. I get frustrated with basically anyone saying anything is a fact besides Molten MCI. I am kind of a hypocrite. I am totally a hypocrite. But especially when it comes to very contentious issues, like, I don't understand the point of typing in a comment section and being like, this is canon. You gotta know it's not. Like, it's a theory. It's just a theory. So I think she's about to talk about Andrew.
Game based on the first story in the series, the book series itself contradicts the games in several pretty major ways, such as having the guard at FNAF 3's location be some random guy who dies and sets the place on fire after one night on the job rather than surviving all 6, having Funtime Freddy chilling in some dude's garage rather than being an Ennard, and the puppet gets dumped in a lake after Pizzeria Simulator. Meanwhile, we see its tearless mask present.
I mean, I think that there's other things in those books that pretty much confirm them not to be canon other than just direct contradictions like that. Because you could technically write a book, right? Oh, how did the puppet go from being under the lake to being in this amalgam thing? Oh, maybe there's 2 Funtime Freddys, right? Because there's literally nothing stopping there from being a franchise of, like, multiple different animatronic robots that are modeled after Funtime Freddy. Those things aren't as solid evidence against the canonicity of the books as something like Into the Pit, right? Where a kid travels back in time and sees the MCI and it is nothing like what's described in the games. People are like running and screaming because they found the dead bodies in the restaurant. William kills them all during the day. That's just obviously not what happened in the games. I think that's a better disproving of the books being in the game's timeline than the things that she just mentioned.
Under the Pizzaplex in Security Breach. Scott Cawthon, the creator of the franchise, did say that some stories in Frights are directly connected to the games, but directly connected does not mean directly canon, and could easily be referring to stories like the one with the alternate FNAF 3, where there are direct connections to the game, but it's still a different series of events.
Yeah, I think Toast put this best. He was talking about the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, which say in their marketing that they're from the world of the newest Five Nights at Freddy's game, Security Breach. And he compared this to the Mario movie. He was like, it would be correct to say that the new Mario movie, it takes place in the world of the Mario video games, which means it has the same characters and the same iconography. It takes place in the Mushroom Kingdom. It's not the Mario Bros. Movie from the 90s where the Goombas are dinosaurs, right? It takes place in the world of the Mario games. That does not mean it's canon to the same timeline as the games. And so I think that wording kind of trips people up a lot. Both interpretations are correct, which is also how I feel about FNAF 3 taking place in either 2015 or 2023, depending on how you look at it. Both interpretations are correct. I just think it's much, much more likely that the books are not canon.
Because of this, while I do plan to reference Frights for evidence, in this video I won't really be addressing the theory that the Fazbear Frights character Andrew is literally in the game continuity filling the role that many fans attribute to Golden Freddy. Instead, the theories I'm primarily going to focus on are the one the majority of the community has generally held as correct in some form or another, the counter theory that has taken the community by storm, and my own personal thoughts on the matter. The most commonly held theory in the community has generally been that Golden Freddy is possessed by 2 spirits. The first one is the crying child in FNAF 4, who died after being stuck in the mouth of the Fredbear animatronic by his older brother Michael. After that, he was taken to the hospital, where one voice, presumably Michael, apologized, and another, who many assume to be his father, series serial killer William Afton, promised to put him back together. From there, people suggest that
I will say, so what she's describing is the community consensus about the theory, and yes, that is what most people believe, right? Cece dies and possesses the Fredbear animatronic, which somehow goes on to become Golden Freddy because they change it for whatever reason. My theory being that the reason that they change the animatronic's outward appearance and turn his hat from purple to black is because of the bite, right? Like, they want to create a different character to, like, they retire Fredbear, and then they have, like, Golden Freddy, it's not his in-canon name, but like they have the second new character, because the second new character didn't kill a child. I do advocate against taking the 8-bit mini games that literally, right? Like she just said, oh, we hear Mike, like we read Mike's words talking to Cece in the hospital. We read William's words talking to Cece in the hospital. And then, of course, there's the other color text that appears that is slightly off yellow. I would advocate against taking that stuff as literally what happens in the real world, and I would look at it more as a representation of the things that happen, right? Like, I wouldn't even be comfortable saying that the dialogue that appears in that game is literally what Mike said. It might be similar to what Mike said. And even the yellow text that we assume is William. It might be similar to William's thoughts and feelings and attitude, but I don't necessarily think that this means that he was in the hospital room whispering this into Cece's ear, right? The 8-bit mini games have always been abstract representations of actual events in the series, and I think one of the biggest flaws among the theorist community is taking FNAF 4 so literally when all of the other mini games are taken in a much more abstract manner. So I think she's going to talk about her theory. She's talking about the community consensus and then the dual process theory and then her own theory. I just wanted to talk about why I think that the community consensus isn't necessarily the best outcome, because I think it makes a lot of logical leaps.
He was taken to the hospital where one voice, presumably Michael, apologized, and another, who many assumed to be his father, series serial killer William Afton, promised to put him back together. From there, people suggest that William found a way to transfer his soul into the Fredbear animatronic, which would eventually become Golden Freddy, after some modifications were made to it before FNAF 2 that ended up changing the top hat and bow tie from purple to black. After all, under certain circumstances in Ultimate Custom Night, you can get jump scared by Fredbear in place of Golden Freddy, so it seems incredibly likely that the two are one and the same. Meanwhile, the second spirit...
Okay, so that's an interesting take, because Springtrap and Scraptrap are both different enemy types that you can face in UCN. So obviously the fact, and same thing with Baby and Scrap Baby. So obviously the fact that two characters are the exact same suit doesn't exclude them from being the same animatronic, right? Like if Scrap Baby and regular Baby both get their own slot, why couldn't Golden Freddy and Fredbear get their own slot? I don't necessarily... I guess I'm not saying that it doesn't prove that they're the same. It's definitely evidence that they're the same. I'm just curious why it would work that way when it doesn't necessarily work the other way, right? Like why them being the same character means they're the same, whereas other characters both being different characters means, but they're also the same. It's, I would have to think about that more. I'm not necessarily convinced by that.
It would be Cassidy, one of the children killed by William in the missing children incident mentioned in the FNAF 1 newspaper.
I definitely need to make a video about that, but the FNAF 2 depictions of the dead children incident, or which I hate the name of because they're dead in all of the incidents, I really want to make a video about the representations of the dead children in the FNAF 2 minigames and why I think that the community takes them a little too literally.
Papers, and in the spin-off novel trilogy, The Silver Eyes, which, despite not being in the game timeline, shares the fact that kids were lured to the back room of Freddy's by William Afton wearing the Spring Bonnie mascot costume and stuffed in the animatronics to hide their bodies. Cassidy in the books
happens in the movie too.
But as the child possessing Golden Freddy in the novel trilogy doesn't exist in the games,
Michael.
And a game-specific character, Jeremy, is attributed to Bonnie instead, she would have been stuffed in the Fredbear animatronic, leading to her sharing the suit with the crying child who was already there. The evidence for this theory comes...
Again, I don't know if that necessarily logically follows, right? Okay, so in the books there's a guy named Michael Brooks, and I think that's just Scott wanting to reuse the name Mike because he had it and there is no Michael Afton equivalent in the books. But if anything, shifting Cassidy over to Bonnie means that Cassidy is not super important because she is able to just be shifted over to Bonnie. I don't remember the name of all the kids in the books, but if there is no Jeremy, if anything, that just places more importance on Jeremy because he's the one that was replaced by this Mike character. So, like, yes, what she's describing happens. I'm just not sure if that's the point that she thinks it is.
It's from a couple sources, such as Golden Freddy having two eyes lit up in the bad ending of FNAF 3, while the other animatronics only had one, potentially suggesting Golden Freddy had two spirits instead of a single spirit.
So this is obviously a point that a lot of people bring up, and it's also something I put in my too long video, which is, yes, there are two lights coming out of Golden Freddy's head, although if you technically look, there's only that Aurora camera effect, whatever it's called, coming out of one eye. So, maybe there's only one bulb in there, but it's still shining out of both eyes. I think that does lead to the dual possession theory, but it suggests that one of the spirits in Golden Freddy has, like, more control than the other, or one of the spirits is, right, can literally see out of the eyes, and the other is just trapped in there. And I think if you combine that with the FNAF world map looking like a brain and a brainstem, it's kind of interesting to think that the thinking part of Golden Freddy might be Cece, and he's able to do things like change what posters look like and project "It's me" in front of Mike, whereas the part of Golden Freddy that can actually see and therefore attacks the security guards, like in FNAF 2 when the head flies down the hallway, that might be Cassidy, right? So Golden Freddy being a malicious force is Cassidy's doing, and Golden Freddy's sort of psychic communication would be Cece. So I obviously do agree in that there's two spirits in Golden Freddy, but I think that the whole, there's two lights inside of him. There's not two lights. There's one light, but it's lit through both eyes, which I do think means something.
Spirit like the others. And in addition to the survival logbook basically confirming that Michael Afton and the Mike Schmidt we play as in FNAF 1 are the same person, it seems to have conversations between two
and it basically also confirms that he's Foxy Bro.
Spirits, one using faded text and the other altered text, where one reveals their name to be Cassidy and various objects can
mostly through Faded asking questions. There's also a point where Faded says, the party was for you, and the altered confirms it, likely referring to FNAF 4's party. Okay, I wish that she'd gone over this verbally. So this is contentious. I think that most people agree with this, but the Faded text says the party was for you. In the book, in another location, altered text says, it was for me. And people put those two things together and assume that it's a question, or not a question, but a statement and a response. That's also how I personally interpret it. But I do want to say that her saying here, altered confirms it, is not necessarily true. I don't think that the word confirms it is there. If she said that in the most likely outcome, or the outcome she believes in, or the community consensus, altered confirms it, that'd be true. But I do want to point out it's not confirmed.
Connected to the crying child are connected to the altered text spirit as well. On top of this, one of the clues needed to find the name Cassidy is found by one of the spirits writing the words "my name" in faded text on a drawing of a tombstone by...
Someone asked me in my comments the other day, like, oh, what is it about the logbook that makes you think that it's like trying to connect to the final gravestone? And I'm like, this. There's a gravestone. And this book came out right after FNAF 6, where there was a gravestone that, like, there's no name on it, so we're still trying to solve it. This is the very obvious indication that the thing we're solving for in the game, my name, is the unlabeled or obscured gravestone in FNAF 6.
And Michael, linking back to how at the end of the game Pizzeria Simulator, we see the names of 4 out of the 5 kids linked to the missing children incident, which, in conjunction with Cassidy being the name of one of the kids in the books, would imply that the Cassidy in this continuity would be the 5th, more mysterious and plot-relevant animatronic, Golden Freddy, and the one missing name on the gravestone. This plot relevance culminates in Ultimate Custom Night.
I also think there's something to be said that Golden Freddy is always, like, the weird one. Like, in FNAF 1, there wasn't really, like, an acknowledgement that Golden Freddy existed, right? Like, he was a spooky Easter egg. So Golden Freddy's place, gameplay-wise, as being the weird one is, in my opinion, even more convincing that the gravestone that's not shown is the weird one, and therefore is Golden Freddy.
Where we play as William Afton himself, trapped in a nightmare coma, though some interpret it as a legitimate afterlife of torment, inflicted by the vengeful spirit of one of his victims. And since beating the game's hardest game mode gives the player a cutscene of Golden Freddy twitching off into the darkness, it's generally believed that Cassidy would be this vengeful spirit. This would seemingly then be paralleled in Fazbear Frights with the characters Jake and Andrew, where Andrew was one of the children William Afton killed, who trapped William in a nightmare coma, and Jake was a boy who died of a...
Yeah, it's very literal, it goes back to the Molten MCI thing, where in the 4th closet, it just directly explains how the Funtime animatronics and the Biddy Babs and the mini arenas are animated, which is that William takes Remnant out of the original animatronics and disperses it among the others, right? It takes a little bit of Remnant to put it in the mini arenas, takes a little more Remnant to put it in, Funtime Foxy. And so while the books aren't canon, that is just so clearly what is going on in the actual sister location game. With that said, the whole, like, William is alive in a hospital, and Andrew is this weird little spirit that's running around with a mask on, and he's keeping him trapped in a nightmare. Whether that proves that in UCN William's in a nightmare versus actually being in the afterlife, I don't find as convincing, because in nothing post-UCN in the game's timeline have we had an indication that William is alive. There's the Mimic, there's Glitch Trap, but there's no reason to think that William either is alive in a hospital somewhere or was at some point taken to a hospital instead of just being burnt alive, right? Like, how the idea of taking William's body out of Scraptrap in the fire of FNAF 6 and someone going, oh my god, there's a guy in there, and then putting him on life support, it doesn't really make sense to me, because theoretically the only thing keeping him alive is like the fact that he's possessing the metal of the animatronic suit. I don't think that you could just take him out of the suit and put him on life support and he'd be alive. So I do totally get the parallel and what she just said, but she kind of made it seem like it was more likely that it was a coma as opposed to the afterlife, whereas I think it's much more likely the afterlife as opposed to a coma.
Head tumor. Both Jake and Andrew end up possessing an animatronic called the Stitch Wraith, where Jake had control of the body's sight and movement due to possessing the head.
Also keep a note, so the Stitch Wraith in the art right here, it has 2 eyes, but only one of them it can see out of, and with it facing us, that's the same one that the light is visible in Golden Freddy.
And Andrew was in the Stitch Wraith's power source and lacked the ability to see. As Jake and the crying child both died due to head-related issues, and Cassidy...
I'm sure she's going to say this, but in the logbook, the CC, the alter text, also says, I can't see.
And Andrew were both kids William killed. Meanwhile, the altered text in the survival logbook mentioned being unable to see. The general view of the fright situation is that Jake parallels the crying child, while Andrew parallels Cassidy, with both of them possessing the same animatronic, but having their roles in terms of control functionally swapped. As in the games, the crying child can't see, while Cassidy would be in control of sight and movement. The thing is, a lot of this evidence is speculative, and that's where Dual Process Theory's video comes in. In their theory, they suggest that the evidence that was used to say that Cassidy and the crying child were 2 separate people possessing one animatronic was completely misinterpreted. After all, the only reason Jake and Andrew had different levels of control over the Stitch Wraith was because they were possessing different parts of it that were eventually combined.
So yeah, that does not typically, in the community's understanding of how Golden Freddy is dual possessed, have an analog. In my theory about how Golden Freddy is dual possessed, it does. My theory would be that CC is possessing the Fredbear plush, the one that he walks around with in FNAF 4, and the one you see on William's death in Sister Location. In the Silver Eyes trilogy, we see that Henry's agony is put into this little doll, and then the doll is put into one of the robots of Charlie, and that allows Charlie to walk around, right? So, like, her soul is in this plush doll, and then you can move that from robot body to robot body to animate those bodies and be possessed by Charlie. So I think that CC is in the plush, and that when the plush is placed inside Golden Freddy, he has control over the animatronic the same way that Charlie does. But Golden Freddy is already possessed by Cassidy. And so that's why he's sort of on the inside, whereas Cassidy has, like, you know, the vision and can see out of the eyes and, you know, do all this stuff. So yes, it is true that in the typical community understanding, there is no 2 parts for them to possess, but in my theory, there is.
Something that isn't implied at all to be the case in the game, since Cassidy's body would have been put entirely into the animatronic. And on the topic of Cassidy, the source for Cassidy being a female missing child is the Silver Eyes novel trilogy, which already has one missing kid who doesn't match the game's Michael Brooks. Scott has reused names for characters before, such as the several Jeremys in this franchise, and just as there is a Michael Afton in the games and not a Michael Brooks, there could then be a Cassidy Afton instead of the Cassidy we see in the novels. The name Cassidy is, after all, revealed in a word search where there is also altered text saying it's me. So why wouldn't the name Cassidy belong to the spirit speaking through the altered text? Additionally, in Help Wanted 2, we find action figures and
So the thing I'd say about that is that, yes, while the word search does say it's me, which is Golden Freddy's catchphrase, and that theoretically is CC trying to communicate with Mike, the puzzle that spells out Cassidy is not necessarily altered text. It doesn't just say Cassidy. The faded text leaves hints throughout the book that lead to the coordinates of the letters. They're not next to each other. It's not necessarily altered, which I think is a huge blow against dual process theory's theory. It's not altered text that is writing Cassidy. It is faded text that is pointing to Cassidy and the different coordinates. If altered text was Cassidy, they could have altered the word search to just say it's me, Cassidy, and they didn't. That's like, it's just so very clear to me that altered text is not Cassidy. Faded text is.
Memory dolls corresponding.
I don't know what she's
but
gonna say about
rather than
that.
2 Golden Freddy dolls or action figures, we only have 1 of each, potentially indicating only 1 soul actually present in the Golden Freddy animatronic.
I would say that could possibly be interpreted as by the time of Help Wanted 2, there's only 1 spirit. Also, there's
While
other
the second eye lit up in
interpretations.
FNAF 3's bad ending would potentially work as evidence towards two spirits, dual process theory argues that this would be representing Charlie, a spirit who was also around for FNAF 3 and as of a few games later ended up inside the animatronic Lefty, a bear with a golden eye who captured the puppet
It's the other eye, though. I don't know if that's important.
animatronic she was possessing, so her father Henry could release the spirits in the Pizzeria Simulator fire. Additionally, at the end of Pizzeria Simulator, the grave that's presumably Charlie's is behind all the others, similar to how Golden Freddy's head in FNAF 3's ending is behind the other four. Charlie could then also be the faded text in the logbook, where she tries to help the crying child remember who he is, possibly to help him move on, similar to the role she plays in FNAF 3. Alternatively,
If he had to remember who he was, then how would he know, like, the party was for me? Also, Charlie's grave being on the hill, like, behind them is also sort of a callback to, again, the fourth closet, where her grave is, like, at the top of a hill under a tree. I also think it's more symbolic of, like, the puppet, looking down on them and, like, guiding and protecting them. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Again, you know what, I'm just gonna shut up and listen to her. I think that this video is already longer than her entire video, and we're not even a quarter of the way through. Let's just let her talk.
Also suggest that this could be William Afton, as it seems possible that the reason William's suit looks different in Pizzeria Simulator compared to FNAF 3 is because he used parts of Golden Freddy to alter his suit after the FNAF 3 fire. Specifically, they propose that William Afton was able to upgrade his suit in this way because the spring-locked suit Michael Afton
I did watch Dual Process Theory's video twice, as well as Matt Pat's reaction to it. I'm not going to remember every single little detail. It was 2 hours long, so I don't necessarily remember that part of it. I'd have to think more about whether or not I think it's likely that Golden Freddy's suit was used to repair Scrap Trap.
Afton gets temporarily stuck in during sister location is actually the Golden Freddy suit, having been relocated.
And this isn't something I thought of. Matt Pat directly points us out that the eye holes do not match up whatsoever.
To sister location, where William would know it would be, after the events of FNAF 1, evidenced by having similarly shaped eye sockets, and Scott Cawthon declining to specify the identity of this spring-lock suit during the interview he gave several years ago. Also, as a note for those who may not be familiar, a spring-lock suit is an animatronic where its mechanical parts are held to the sides of the suit by spring locks to fit a human performer inside. However, the spring locks are a bit unstable, and when they malfunction, all the animatronic parts return to their original locations, aka where the person's body was. Anyway, the theory that this suit is Golden Freddy.
I will say, and this is just so pedantic, it doesn't necessarily need to be a total spring lock failure, right? Like if one of them fails, it might just stab into your body over here, right? Even in the movie, you see it kind of happening like one at a time. So it's not entirely like the entire suit crushes you. It could just be that you get like stabbed a little bit.
Freddy is also their proof that not only was Cassidy the crying child, but that there was no fifth missing kid. Rather, the fifth kid linked to the disappearances was the crying child himself. They proposed that, since the bodies were never reported to be found, they would have never been removed from the animatronics. Then, operating off the theory that the sister location springlock suit is Golden Freddy, Mike being able to get inside the suit would mean that there was no missing kid's body left in there in the first place.
Just because the police didn't find the body doesn't mean that William didn't remove the bodies at some point.
Because of this, they suggest that after the crying child got bitten by Fredbear, he didn't die in the hospital, but was taken home by William, who wanted to help him recover. He stayed at home in his coma until William ended up killing the other kids and finding out about Remnant, and then was put by William into the Fredbear suit and intentionally spring-locked to make him possess it. However, Fredbear didn't respond, and since there would have been spring-lock scars.
But we clearly see in sister location that the plush is possessed. So what, William put him in the suit and then he possessed the plush somehow, right? Like we see Charlie possess the puppet. It happens. We watch it happen. She dies, and then a little while later, the puppet comes over and floats over and lies next to her body. Cece dies basically holding the Fredbear plush, right? Like it's right in front of him. You can almost imagine the plush as being on the bed next to him in the hospital. I don't know. I would just take I would need a lot of convincing to think that he's possessing something other than the plush.
Scars on the body, it would be clear that Cassidy hadn't died from his coma. As such, William hid the body in a box to explain the purpose of the unopened box were shown at the end of FNAF 4.
I always say this about the box. Whatever's in the box, if it were opened, needs to prove the theory the community would have, right? Scott's going to open the box once we figure it out. If Scott's like, you did it, you solved it, open the box and there's a mangled corpse of a child in it, what does that prove? When FNAF 4 came out, Remnant, like, didn't exist, right? So, I'm not, again, I'm just not, I'm not
Around this
convinced.
same time, because a man in a costume was suspected to be behind the murders and someone was convicted according to the newspaper articles we see in FNAF 1, dual process theory explains that William and
4 or 5 children are now linked to the incident at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza where a man dressed as a cartoon mascot lured them into a back room. While the suspect has been charged, the bodies themselves were never found. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has been fighting an uphill battle ever since to convince families to return to the pizzeria. It's a tragedy. It says charged, it does not say convicted, and in Help Wanted 1, there's this little, like, screen, and it says, you know, like, the charges didn't stick or something like that. So I don't think this has been retconned away. I literally think they arrested William, couldn't find the bodies, and then so he didn't even go to trial.
his business partner Henry, who would be familiar with the springlock suits and how to use them, would have been questioned by the police. William would have then
Other people know how to use them. That's what the FNAF 3 training tapes are for. It's not like they're the only 2 people who ever use springlock suits.
used his own child mysteriously vanishing from his bed as an alibi for just being another grieving parent, and Henry would have been arrested and convicted. Because of this, and
But his child died too, unless you're putting that later in the timeline.
because how in Help
I love how literally everyone uses Fusion Z Gamer's gameplay footage. Because he, like, that's where I got all mine from, too. That's funny.
Wanted 2, there are graves representing each animatronic that need to be lit in a certain order to unlock a secret, with the puppet being the last one. Henry's daughter Charlie would have then been killed after this point. Their timeline of events then have the events of FNAF 2, the opening and closing of Sister Location's predecessor location, then FNAF 1, with Golden Freddy being moved by William to Sister Location after that, followed by William's springlocking and the events of Sister Location, then FNAF 3, Pizzeria Simulator, and Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night is where they suggest some more things need to be changed around from the usual interpretations of events. They suggest that, rather than Golden Freddy, the character actually tormenting William in that game would be his other son, Michael Afton. Their evidence for this is that, while the vengeful spirit is portrayed as a child and described as the one you, meaning William, shouldn't have killed, the fact that Mike was killed by the Funtime animatronics who thought they were killing
Mike wasn't killed by the Funtime animatronics. Baby literally says over and over and over in the cutscene, "You won't die." Mike does not die. That part frustrates me more, and a lot of people who really love the CC is Cassidy theory even say, like, no, Mike's not the vengeful spirit. And I've said this before, but why would Scott come up with a character whose moniker is the one you should not have killed if that character already has a name? What mystery is there to solve by saying, oh, the one you should not have killed is Mike? It's not an interesting mystery. Like, it's not a mystery. We know who Mike is. So no. Let's continue.
William, after Mike was sent to Sister Location by his father, would qualify his death as being the result of William's actions, and give him a solid reason to be vengeful and stick around after dying. On top of this, the vengeful spirit forces William to essentially go through what Mike had to during the events of the games, functionally taking the role of a security guard fending off animatronics. The clip we see if the hardest game mode is beaten would then not be a sign that Golden Freddy was the one keeping him trapped. Instead, dual process theory states that this isn't actually Golden Freddy at all. It's whole and not withered, Fredbear before he was Golden Freddy, with
he has a black hat, though.
Cassidy's body inside being springlocked, William Afton's biggest regret. Except that's not exactly possible, is it? While all of this may sound fine on the surface, there are actually a few major issues with the theory as Corey and Connie present it. For example, the shot we see in Ultimate Custom Night may not match withered Golden Freddy like we see in FNAF 2, but it doesn't match Fredbear with his purple hat and bow tie either. In fact, it looks pretty much exactly like Golden Freddy in FNAF 1, where it was repaired from its withered state after the events of FNAF 2, just under different lighting. The fact that they flat out say that this isn't Golden Freddy and is definitely Fredbear in its prime before ever getting withered is a misrepresentation of one of the few facts we actually have in the series, and while I don't think they intentionally meant to mislead their audience, this isn't the only example of incorrect information or things being misrepresented in this video. They refer to the scooper as a remnant extractor while displaying on screen the blueprints that confirm it to be a remnant injector, which is more likely to be the cause for why
they don't directly use the scooper as evidence for Mike's situation, but the incorrect description makes the reason for Mike surviving solely his anger. Yeah, like agony. No, it's why Baby says you won't die. It's because he was injected with Remnant, and Remnant can heal you.
Michael was still around after Sister Location, rather than just his desire for vengeance on William. They also say that Charlie had to be the last to die because of the grave order in Help Wanted 2.
I having not played Help Wanted 2, I don't know this puzzle. That's fair, you know, that might be out of context. But you have to ask yourself, right, like, could it be in reverse order? Could the puppet have died first, and therefore you take the order of the gravestones, and it's the other way around? is the puppet the last one to have to be lit because the puppet was the last one to move on? Because in Security Breach, we see the puppet in the Nightmare staff bots, right? Like, there's multiple other interpretations, and to say, like, oh, this is a fact, that this is the order that the kids died in. I think that we need to think more outside the box, especially when it comes to new releases, because no, it's not confirmed that that's what this is symbolizing, if it symbolizes anything at all.
But it could just as easily be representing how her mask was the last to fall on the happiest day ending of FNAF 3, or the back left positioning of her grave at the end of Pizzeria Simulator. Something that seems significantly more likely given the fact that in Pizzeria Simulator, her father Henry specifically says that he was the first one impacted by William.
There's very little dialogue in FNAF. And so I think that when something is coming from a source that is not, I don't want to like discount Phone Guy, but a lot of the stuff Phone Guy says is there for gameplay purposes, right? So when someone says something in dialogue, I think that trumps any sort of cryptic symbolism that we can come up with or parallels. When Henry says, "A wound first inflicted on me," Henry, like, Charlie was the first victim. There's no other way of interpreting this. Any theory that has Charlie not being the first victim, it is ludicrous to me.
William's actions. Something that wouldn't make sense if multiple other kids died before his own. They say that the eye sockets of the sister location Springlock suit match up with the inside of the Golden Freddy suit in the trailer for Into the Pit, but not only are the eyes not the correct shape, but Golden Freddy doesn't have faceplates. And there's a world of difference between faceplates that are attached to the head but can open up, and the fact that Bonnie can have his entire face as one whole piece removed. This issue in particular is a major one, since Golden Freddy being the sister location Springlock suit is what a large portion of their theory relies on. Is there evidence?
Yeah, the eye thing is just, like, it's literally not the same shape. That would also imply that, like, the muzzle on Golden Freddy can come off. I'm not sure if we've seen that in any other animatronic. Right, like, if you look at Golden Freddy from the outside, it doesn't have those very obvious lines that you can see into, whereas when you're inside the Springlock suit, you can very obviously see out of them. So I'm not entirely sure how you can square that circle.
Evidence that there was no body in the Golden Freddy suit, and therefore no actual fifth missing kid. With this being the
William removed them. Like that's a very easy thing to work around.
Case, even if the name Cassidy did belong to the crying child and not a different kid William killed, the theory that there was no fifth missing kid other than the crying child loses a lot of its credibility, especially when you consider that there would be no point in William removing the crying child from the suit in the first place. After all, the whole point of him putting the bodies in the suits was so that they wouldn't be found. So it doesn't make sense for William to springlock his child, then remove the body out of concern that the body that was just as hidden as the others would be recognized, and then proceed to tell the authorities that his kid was kidnapped. He could just have said that the kidnapper took his kid, and if the body was found in the springlock suit, say that the kidnapper was the one who put him there. Relatedly, and this is a bit of an aside, but while I do think the idea that Henry was the one accused and convicted is cool, I have my doubts. While the FNAF 1 newspaper does say that someone was convicted, that's—
Where? Was this charged? I just read this. It doesn't— Oh my god, it says it in the headline. Oh my god. This is totally off topic, but I sent an email to my regional manager the other day, and I had something in big bold letters at the top, and then I had a message underneath it, and he responded, and he asked a question that was answered in the bold part, because he just didn't read it. Oh my god. 5 children now reported missing, suspect convicted. I just literally skipped over the headline. Oh my god, I'm an idiot.
Put in there.
Okay, please, save me, ID's Fantasy, please, you're about to
Relatedly, and this is a bit of an aside, but while I do think the idea
Explain
that
why
Henry
I'm not
was the one
stupid.
accused and convicted is cool, I have my doubts. While the FNAF 1 newspaper does say that someone was convicted, that same article instead says that the suspect was charged, which is not the same thing as being convicted or proven guilty of a crime. I think it's likely that when Scott wrote that, he didn't realize the difference in the terminology, particularly given the fact that in installments in the franchise that came later, he seems to emphasize that William was the one primarily suspected, but it was the lack of body.
But there had been no evidence, there had been no bodies, and so there could be no charge. William Afton had left town, and there was nothing to stop him. It is interesting to note that here it says he wasn't even charged. Either way, though, no bodies, no conviction. I think that's from the novels, though, so it may be different. You know, and again, in Help Wanted, it says the charges didn't stick. So I think that's your answer.
That led to no conviction taking place and William going free. Which checks out given another one of the newspapers mentions that security footage identified the killer and the police only think he lured the kids using a mascot costume. But tangent aside, Golden Freddy not being the sister location Springlock suit isn't the only thing that undermines the argument that there was no fifth missing kid. After all, look at the Foxy Go 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 minigame in FNAF 2, where we're shown William smiling and the bodies of 5 kids. If the 5th kid was meant to be the crying child who William was trying to save, why would William be smiling? Why why would the crying child be grouped in with the others at Freddy's for Foxy to find? Even if Help Wanted 2 only shows one Fredbear of each collectible and only 6 graves like Pizzeria Simulator, the reason for this isn't that the 5th missing kid is the crying child, but it's more likely because William didn't kill the crying child, Michael did. And as such, lumping the crying child—
I mean, that's just the community general theory, the consensus, right, is that there are 7 dead kids, the 5 MCI kids, Charlie, and Cece. So, yeah, why is his grave not the same as the others? Because he wasn't killed by the serial killer.
In with the other missing kids wouldn't make much sense in the context of showing William's victims. Relatedly, the argument for Cassidy being the name of the crying child, while understandable, is rather flawed as well. While dual process theory argues that the name being revealed in the word search containing altered text means the name belongs to the speaker with altered text, this completely negates the fact that all the hints that lead to the clues to solve for the name in the first place read my name. Not your name or his name, but my name, as in the name belonging to the spirit writing the faded text. In fact, this is actually backed up via the altered text in the word search.
Okay, I want to see if she says
theory mentions that on the page opposite the word search, there's a mirror with the question, "What do you see?" underneath it in faded text.
And this is so cool, right? Because for a while, right, like Pat couldn't solve the logbook, and then someone on Reddit did. And the fact that there's a mirror there, right? And if you're reading the book, it's a mirror of you, the person reading it. But if you close the book, it's a mirror of the word search, which is where the name is shown, which is just it's such a cool thing you can do with a book, right? Just the formatting of the book. I will say this, I brought this up before, but one of the clues that leads to one of the letters in the Cassidy word search is actually written by Mike. It's in the dark red pen. It's not in faded text, and I've always wondered about that. I want to see if she brings it up.
And suggests that the word search would then contain the crying child's answer, "It's me, Cassidy." However, what they seem to mostly ignore outside of a passing mention are the 2 other sentences that appear in the word search.
Yeah, it says here, let me, one of the most important lore drops, it says Foxy.
Who are you, and what is your name? The crying child's response to being asked what he sees in the mirror is—
Oh, okay, so it asks, what is your name? And then again, Cassidy is not altered text. It's if the crying child can write what is your name, they could write Cassidy, but it's not. It's found in random coordinates on the grid, and it's faded who leads to those coordinates. Clearly, altered is not Cassidy.
Isn't "It's me, Cassidy"? His answer to what he sees is just "It's me," followed by the questions, "Who are you?" and "What's your name?"
Oh, interesting. What do you see? It's me. He can see himself? Okay, we've kind of always assumed that, I can't see, right? He can't see anything. Does this imply that at some point he could see himself, right? Like, if he possesses... If Fredbear the plush is on his hospital bed as he's dying, and he moves, and now he possesses the plush, the first thing he would see would be his own corpse in bed. That's horrifying. I'm not saying that, like, that's canon or I believe that, but just the thought of that, that's horrific. Oh my god. I'm, like, tingling. My hair is, like, standing on end. Wow. I just spooked myself. I'm gonna let her keep talking.
Which the faded text spirit answers in turn by making use of alterations to the book made by the crying child and Michael Afton to spell out their own name, Cassidy.
Okay, so she did bring up that Mike writes something in the book that it uses.
Because of this, I think that the evidence for the crying child and Cassidy being separate people seems much more straightforward. And I think it's a similar case for Cassidy being the vengeful spirit instead of Mike. Every time we see a vengeful...
Okay, so I don't think she's gonna bring it up, but yeah, to me, it's just 100% confirmed. And I literally hate when people say that. Okay, let me rewind. To me, it is so overwhelmingly convincing that faded text is Cassidy, because if altered text was Cassidy, it would have altered the text in the word search. That's basically my debunk of the entire video. Note when I say vengeful spirit, I'm specifically referring to any spirit that seems particularly angry at William compared to the others. Keep in mind, so the name vengeful spirit comes from the casting call for UCN, for the voice that you hear from the one you should not have killed. So we use vengeful spirit and the one you should not have killed interchangeably, but technically vengeful spirit is not a canon term. It's something that Scott used in a casting call.
In FNAF, it's a child who was killed by William Afton. The Fazbear Frights continuity has Andrew, and the FNAF movie has a blonde boy who is shown being lured by William Afton at the very beginning of the movie. Why would it be any different here, where we're told that someone William killed, not someone William got killed, but someone he should not have killed, but did, is the one who trapped him in Ultimate Custom Night? As much as I do see the evidence that dual process theory presented for Michael, I don't think it's substantial enough for the theory to work when put up against the counter evidence. They write off the vengeful spirit looking and sounding like a child as Mike just appearing at the age he started being traumatized, but my first question, if this is the case, is where did his British accent go? And my second—
Yes. Okay, so that's a phenomenal point. But I will say, Fredbear speaks with like multiple overlaying sound effects and voices. One of them is very obviously a child. It's a very like squeaky child. It's like, what, you are not our friend. And it also doesn't have a discernible British accent. So that's Cece, who doesn't have a British accent. So I am curious if she brings that up. Or in general, if you're watching this, hey, maybe leave a comment what you think that might
Second is, why would Scott tell the Vengeful Spirit's voice?
Okay, Vengeful Spirit, voiced by Tabitha. This is for the voice of a young child who speaks in a whisper from the shadows. This child is in control and is toying with the player, who is helpless to change their situation and prevent their inevitable end. The gender should not be immediately clear. It should work as either a young boy or a young girl, and you are welcome to do readings leaning one way or the other. I like how this says immediately clear, because it does mean, that heavily implies to me that Scott thinks that eventually it will be determined, right? Once the community does their theories and figures out the player of UCN is William and all the other stuff going on, it is then clear which gender it is. And the clearness of that is that it's Cassidy, who is always depicted as a girl. Although, some of the lines that are said in the voice lines in UCN say he. So that's always been a contention. I wonder if ID's Fantasy is going to bring any of this up, or maybe if she's going to make another video about Golden Freddy.
Actor that the gender of the spirit should be unclear. Additionally, as far as we can tell, spirits manifest at the age they died, whether that be as a child, such as in the case of the missing kids, or as an adult, like William in Fazbear Frights, and this one kid's grandma in Tales from the Pizzaplex. I don't believe we've ever actually seen any instances of a spirit manifesting as a different age than they actually were.
Even Henry, if he's Old Man Consequences, he's an old man.
When they died. Dual process theory also talks about how one line in Ultimate Custom Night proves that Henry isn't the vengeful spirit because the spirit refers to Henry in the third person, saying, he tried to release you, he tried to release us. But they neglect to mention how that very quote ends with the spirit referring to a second person trying to release the spirits as well, when they say they'd keep William trapped no matter how many times they burn us. This
And they refers to Mike in FNAF 3, which then means Mike is not the vengeful spirit.
indicates not just Henry as an outside party, but someone else who had also attempted to burn them. The
Mike
only
in
fire
FNAF 3.
besides Pizzeria Simulator by this point in the franchise is the one we see in FNAF 3, where the guard sees hallucinatory phantoms of animatronics from FNAF 1 and 2 before
Or they're
eventually
real
setting the building
phantoms,
on
which is
fire
always
on the last
possible.
night. In order to have hallucinations of those animatronics, it would make sense for the player to have seen them before. And
I never liked that just because I think they might actually just be ghosts.
since we play as Mike in FNAF 1,
Also, and I said this in my too long video, I've never been a security guard at Chuck E. Cheese's, but I am perfectly capable of hallucinating the animatronics because they are popular mascots from a nationwide restaurant. You don't need to be a security guard to have a nightmare about the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. I've had those. So I really think that using that as evidence of saying, oh, it has to be Mike is not convincing. But obviously, I do think it's Mike.
and most likely on the last night of FNAF 2, not to mention it would make sense if we played as Mike at some point in each of the first 6 games to connect the narrative, this guard was likely Michael Afton. As such, this line from Ultimate Custom Night implies that not only is Henry an outside party, but so is Michael. This, combined with the issue of the Vengeful Spirit's depiction as an American child that William specifically shouldn't have killed, is enough for me to say that Michael being the Vengeful Spirit doesn't seem particularly likely with the evidence we have. Though if Michael doesn't work as the Vengeful Spirit, that brings me to another point that dual process theory makes. Why Cassidy? What makes Cassidy the one William shouldn't have killed? What makes Cassidy so special? Well, other than how I'm pretty sure the title of the one you should not have killed mostly just stems from the fact that if William hadn't killed them, he wouldn't have ended up in Ultimate Custom Night, I think part of what makes Cassidy so special is the fact that Cassidy is connected to Golden Freddy. While Michael represents the human side of the first 6 games arc, Cassidy represents the spirits. While Michael has his arc of killing his brother to having his own life ruined by his father to helping try and bring everything to an end in Pizzeria Simulator, Golden Freddy has its own significance in the story as well. It appears as a specter in the first 2 games, and in FNAF 3, we see a 5th spirit chase William into the Spring Bonnie suit he gets spring locked in after he tears the other 4 animatronics apart. Events that I would like to note probably take place before FNAF 1, as Fungi seems to have been alive for when Fazbear Entertainment found and sealed William in the room after the fact, but that is besides the point.
Okay, she's not going to talk about it. I have no idea if she's ever seen any of my videos, but I wholeheartedly believe the protagonist of the 8-bit minigames, I believe, is Cassidy. The nighttime gameplay is Mike, and the dual protagonist theory, which is sort of like my thing, is that the 8-bit minigames are being played or experienced by Cassidy. Cassidy is her spirit is in animatronica or whatever, and therefore has access to, you know, go through whatever flip side nonsense allows FNAF World to happen. And so she's able to see these mini games, which themselves have been corrupted by William's real world actions, which is all stuff that is directly stated is possible and canon in FNAF World, which Scott has said is canon. And so I think that there's dual protagonists. And so all of this stuff, right, what we're seeing right now, this Happiest Day minigame, everyone's always like, if that's the crying child, where's Cassidy? Cassidy's watching. That's where Cassidy is. Cassidy's the player.
Additionally, one of FNAF 3's potential...
And then my biggest piece of evidence is that in UCN, when Cassidy is the one doing the Night Guard nighttime gameplay stuff, the bonus content is not 8-bit minigames, it's TV shows. And now it is flipped, and now that is Mike's experience as someone in the afterlife. Because as we know, Mike loves TV. And so Mike is watching those shows the way that Cassidy played the games in the other games.
Potential ending centers around giving a Golden Freddy spirit their happiest day, allowing all the other spirits the ability to move on. FNAF 4 is all about the events centering on the Crying Child and Fredbear, and while Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator don't highlight the presence of Golden Freddy, Ultimate Custom Night does. Not only do we see Golden Freddy if the max difficulty is beaten, showing the animatronic is significant to the events we see, but the representation of the vengeful spirit talking to the character Old Man Consequences is a bear. While dual process theory does mention that the sped up ambiance might be William calling out to Henry and Michael, potentially casting the Old Man and the Bear as Henry and Mike, I honestly find it more likely that no matter who Old Man Consequences is or is not, if the audio is meant to be William calling out, it would more likely connect to how Mike and Henry were the ones who tag-teamed setting William on fire again.
And also the people who he knew in his real life, right? Like his best friend and then his son, you know, he's screaming for help. And I love that scene so much. I love that. I said in my too long video that that's my favorite part of FNAF.
Pizzeria Simulator was the culmination of Michael's arc. He tracked down his father just like he promised to in Sister Location, and his final living act was to take him down by trapping him in the fiery death maze Henry created. Meanwhile, Ultimate Custom Night is the culmination of Golden Freddy's arc. After trying and failing
exactly
to destroy William Afton by...
Assuming it wasn't done to make William stay alive anyway, either interpretation works though. Oh, she means like if it's not his afterlife, if he's in a coma, which is fine, because either way he's being tormented.
Springlocking him, the vengeful spirit wanted to make William suffer. So, using the connection between them that William created by using parts of Golden Freddy to modify his own suit, Cassidy set up Ultimate Custom Night, making William face the terror of his own creations. But even if Cassidy is the vengeful spirit and not the crying child, are these two characters really sharing Golden Freddy? Dual process theory wasn't wrong, that most of the evidence for it is speculation. The head in FNAF 3 may have both eyes lit, but it also seems to only have one light source, and is from a game intended to be the series' conclusion before the crying child even existed. So I don't think that necessarily proves anything either way. There's the Jake and Andrew parallel, but even if the characters themselves do parallel the attributes of the crying child and Cassidy in some ways, the point remains that their situation is the way it is because they were initially possessing two different objects and ended up with their differences in sight and ability due to ending up in different places in the assembled endoskeleton. Is that really meant to be a parallel, or is it just coincidence? Not only that, but would it even be possible for the crying child to possess Golden Freddy at all? If William did eventually kill another child and put their body in the suit, would he have known how or been able to put his son's soul in the animatronic? Well, I'd argue that he didn't, but I think someone else was able to instead. The line, "I will put you back together" in FNAF 4
okay,
that
she's
is
going to address the text being a different color. Interesting. Oh, I love this. I really want to know what she thinks here.
Just before the crying child phase and the infamously unsolved box appears on screen is written in yellow font, just like the other lines attributed to William in the game. Or they would be, if not for the fact that the text color of these lines is a lighter shade of yellow. While this color is shared with another character in the game, this doesn't necessarily indicate anything, as there are also two characters who share a certain shade of green. Additionally, I also don't think this change in color was a mistake or arbitrary, as I think it would be rather weird for William to refer to himself as his son's friend, like the light yellow text.
So I disagree with that, just because William sometimes speaks as Bonnie, right? In Freddy Maze, he has different colored text, and in my opinion, one of the colors represents him speaking in his Bonnie voice to Susie to like lure her to the back.
Rather, I would like to point out that this lighter yellow connects better with what we see in FNAF World, where after receiving clues from a glitchy Fredbear to set up the pieces of FNAF 3's Happiest Day ending, light yellow text appears at the end of the game saying some lines that connect pretty much directly to the ones said in FNAF 4, except instead of "I will put you back together," they say "the pieces are in place for you, all you have to do is find them. Rest." Not only does this in a way connect to how the FNAF 4 box has been described as the pieces put together, but I find this particularly significant since in FNAF 3 there is one particular spirit that is trying to help the other children rest. The puppet, Charlie Emily.
So one of the reasons I would disagree with that is because the puppet is shown in the Happiest Day minigame and not in any of the others, right? So okay, the puppet is the hero of the protagonist of the Happiest Day minigame, but other ones are Toy Chica and Mangle and Balloon Boy. So if anything, I think the puppet's present as the presence as the protagonist in Happiest Day sort of disproves her importance, right? Like, my theory is that Cassidy is the one playing all of the games spectrally, right? Not like literally physically moving the arcade cabinets. Cassidy is playing all of them, and therefore is the one who's causing all of these events to happen and setting up Happiest Day. And in this last instance is now playing as, the representation, the abstraction of the puppet. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying that ID's fantasy is wrong, but I am saying that there are other interpretations other than like, oh, the puppet did it all. Because I think if the puppet did it all, then there would be other indications of the puppet's presence in the other games.
This is another reason I think Charlie's death would be earlier in the timeline than Dual Prime.
Also, one thing I want to note is all of the masks are sort of looking to the side. I know it's difficult because it's in like a 2D plane, right? But the noses are pointed away, right? You see both eyes, but the nose is pointing the other direction. Whereas the puppet is staring right at the screen. The puppet can see, because the puppet is like put back together and is totally aware, right? That's a line from UCN. I am very aware. The others are like animals, but I am very aware. The puppet is staring at the player. Because the player is Cassidy, in my opinion.
Process theory presents. As the guardian spirit of the children and the one shown to be involved with the kids possessing their animatronics in some way, I think it's very likely that Charlie is the one who vowed to put the crying child back together, and that William had nothing to do with the situation outside of being the cause of Charlie's death. The crying child died from his injuries, and Charlie's spirit may have led his soul to Fredbear, where she would try to help him rest.
That would necessitate that Charlie died before CC, which is not unheard of. A lot of people believe that, but I would need more evidence of that.
In fact, I think this would also explain why the crying child would have less control over the Golden Freddy suit than Cassidy. After all, Cassidy's entire body was put into the Springlock suit. Meanwhile, the crying child's soul would have been guided in from a distance, making his connection to the suit much less powerful. They don't need to be possessing different parts of the suit like Jake and Andrew, they just need to have different levels of strength due to their differences in connection. As for the more direct evidence of him sharing the suit with Cassidy, for that I turn primarily to two sources, the survival logbook and the Endo daycare and security breach. The first one is pretty well known, where a little girl with black hair is shown receiving the cake from the puppet. With Cassidy in the novel trilogy being described as a girl with long black hair, the depiction of a black-haired girl is particularly striking, with the good ending of FNAF 3 being achieved through the puppet giving cake to a spirit.
I'm also pretty sure that's the only depiction of a human in the logbook. I could be totally wrong, but I think it is, and so if that's doing something to indicate that the spirit in the logbook is that black-haired girl, I think that's another thing to look at, right? Like, why else would there be a human depicted in the book if it's not trying to point our attention as to that being the character who's like playing, playing the book, the faded text.
With a Golden Freddy mask. However, while this alone could just be taken as evidence that the Cassidy of the games is meant to resemble the trilogy version of the character, that alone doesn't do much to prove Cassidy and the crying child are occupying the same space. What I think it does is this poster found in the Endo daycare and security breach. At first glance, this seems to just be a poster that, along with other similar ones, is trying to teach the endoskeletons in the game what to do and what not to.
Okay, so it's specifically a hospital bed, and you have this character who's kind of looks like the Cassidy depiction in the logbook in the bed. Let's see what she's going to say.
In this case in particular, don't hospitalize children. But if you look closer, you'll notice something interesting. Not only does the bedspread look pretty dang similar to the one we see in the FNAF world.
Yo! No way, that's crazy. Huh, okay, so I don't know what she's going to say. I have not played Security Breach. I've stated that multiple times. Okay. Huh, okay, that's getting my brain turning. There's a big theory that the person dreaming FNAF 4 is Mike. Like, we know for a fact it's Mike. But there's a theory that the person who actually experienced FNAF 4 happening was not necessarily what didn't have to be Mike. It could have been someone else, and that somehow their memories are like inside Mike, right? Especially if he's dreaming it post sister location, because he gets injected with all the remnant from all of the children, including Elizabeth. And so it's possible that he's dreaming the memories of some of the MCI children. Is this implying that FNAF 4, when it really happened, was experienced by Cassidy? There's the whole thing about the test chamber. Could that be a reason that, oh my god, wait. Could Cassidy be the parallel to the kid who was tested on within the books, where she had to go through this testing facility and then was died and spring locked, which might be why Nightmare Fredbear's gold and has a mouth stomach, or does only Nightmare have a mouth stomach? This blanket thing just made me reconsider the entirety of FNAF 4. I'm gonna have to look into this when I'm not on camera. Okay. I have no idea what she's about to say. Maybe she's about to spell it out perfectly. But is it possible that the person who really experienced the true events of FNAF 4 was Cassidy, and Mike is dreaming about it years later because dreams give you access to the ghost world, and he was injected with her remnant during Sister Location, which is before FNAF 3. The dreams have to happen before FNAF 3 because they're referenced in the logbook, which happens before FNAF 3. I'm worried about those implications. Wow, I'm gonna have to look into that later.
Or bedroom, where on occasion medical equipment
Almost
can
done. We're
appear,
almost
connecting
done
this
here.
back to the crying child's injuries after FNAF 4, but
Yes.
the child in this hospital bed isn't a boy with
So there's pills and there's an IV. That doesn't necessarily relate it back to Cece being in a coma or whatever. If you're trying to drug someone to keep them in bed or keep them hallucinating, and want them to be healthy, you could just do that, right? Like if William kidnapped Cassidy and is making her stay in this bed, he could be drugging her with pills. He could be putting an IV in her so like she doesn't necessarily need to eat a good hearty meal. We always assumed that that's what those things were, but it's not confirmed.
the striped shirt, as would be assumed if this was representing the crying child. Instead, it's a little girl with black hair. Why put a black-haired girl in either of these positions? Cassidy definitely wasn't willing to rest in FNAF 3 based on Ultimate Custom Night being a thing, and she also definitely wasn't involved with the events of FNAF 4, which took place years
Technically not those nights specifically, but the events surrounding the crying child.
before she died. However, the crying child was. He's the character directly relevant to FNAF 4, and because of that game connecting to the yellow text in FNAF World, he's also connected directly to the events of Happiest Day in FNAF 3, implying it wasn't Cassidy being given the cake in that ending, it was the crying child, with his
Well, yeah, because in FNAF, this is a reverse of what happens in FNAF 4, where it's his party, and then the 4 people with the masks are there. And also the layout of the Happiest Day minigame is the flippity-floppity of FNAF 4.
this in mind, it can be assumed that both the logbook image and the security breach poster show Cassidy occupying a space linked to the crying child, almost as though she and the crying child were occupying the same space in Golden Freddy. So do I think
I don't know if I find that super convincing. That seems very, not arbitrary, roundabout, I would say, right? You always have to ask yourself, how Scott the Puzzle Maker, how is he intending us to know that we solved it? There has to be not only a solution, but a clear solution, right? Like Cassidy's name being Cassidy in the word search. Obviously an answer. So you'd have to ask, like, oh, how this means that they're sharing Golden Freddy because Cassidy is in Cece's bed. I think that there's a better theory. I'm going to have to think about my new interpretation of FNAF 4.
dual process theory solved FNAF? Not really. While I respect the effort and creativity that went into their video, the evidence they present doesn't stand up super well in the face of some of the evidence they appear to have misrepresented or overlooked.
And this is why ID's Fantasy is the GOAT, because she's the one who knows how to say all this in a very nice and respectful
It's
manner.
because of this and some other theories I've seen recently that lead me to the final topic I wanted to discuss in this video. It's pretty easy to find
No, for this bit, I'm talking about stuff generally, not about any one theory in particular. Feel free to apply this to my videos as well.
evidence for a theory and present it in a convincing way, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. The theories that tend to get the most attention are the ones that have a big reveal presented confidently that people haven't considered before, regardless of the actual validity of the evidence presented.
What's so funny is that anything that is now seen as community consensus was hated when it was first, thought of, right? Like the dual possession of Golden Freddy, or even like the existence of Remnant, right? For so long, people tried to deny that Remnant was in the games, or like illusion discs and whatever that kind of stuff is. That is now just like, again, consensus. I'm not gonna say confirmed, consensus within the community. But yeah, there is this drive to like you want to be the first person to be among the people who solved FNAF. You didn't do it, but you saw the video before anyone else, and you get that satisfaction. So yes, there is absolutely a drive for people to want to believe the more out there theories so that they could be like, FNAF theory hipsters.
As a result, most theories that get popular take ideas that are largely agreed upon and suggest a different answer instead. Sometimes this is warranted, but there are also instances where we were probably right the first time or another answer is more likely, yet the understanding of why is overlooked or forgotten in the theory that gets popularized. As cool as it is to find a new interpretation that seems to solve something, it's important to be aware of all the evidence that interpretation has working both for and against it, as well as how much weight certain evidence should be given based on its source, quality, accuracy, and clarity, before settling on a theory. Otherwise, we run the risk of unsolving the lore rather than solving it. However, just
Right, so I have a video called Unsolving Midnight Motorist where I look at all this, like, evidence that no matter what your opinion on what Midnight Motorist is, you have to consider and dismiss, right? Like, in Midnight Motorist, you drive on the left side of the road. That could imply that you're in England, or it can mean nothing and you can dismiss it. Either way, you have to notice it and then make a decision whether or not you think that's something that's lore relevant, or whether it's something that's just there for gameplay purposes. And so I really, really want to point out, like, that, the purpose of that video was not for me to say, like, oh, it's William as a kid in England. It was for me to say, you need to be aware of the fact that you're dismissing certain pieces of evidence in your theory, so that when other people look at your theory and dismiss your evidence, you're being empathetic to their position, because you too are dismissing evidence.
Just because I disagree with dual process theory's interpretation of the timeline doesn't mean that you have to. Additionally, I would like to encourage dual process theory to continue to make theory videos in the future.
Yep, genuinely. Please do. Even if you don't build it off of this last theory, even if you, watch ID's Fantasies video and realize that, like, some of the things you said were wrong, or even if you double down and you do believe it, make more content. Please, just make more theories. It is how the community is going to grow and better itself, right? If the only person who ever made FNAF theories was MatPat, we would be stuck in the dark ages, and I love MatPat. But you always need diverse voices, because one or two of the things that you discovered might be the key to solving other mysteries. So please, you guys are amazing at making videos and explaining yourselves. Your editing, it was humorous. It was engaging to watch for over 2 hours. Please make more videos, please.
Future. A variety of beliefs and perspectives on the lore is incredibly important in solving the things that do need to be solved. And while no one should blindly trust anyone who claims to have the answers, myself included, no one should be written off just because they might not get everything right all the time. With all that said, I hope this video brought some clarity to the debate around Golden Freddy and the identity of the spirits connected to it. Let me know your thoughts about the topic down in the comments, and hey, if you enjoyed the video and made it this far in, consider subscribing. Or if you're interested in my thoughts on some of the other topics Dual Process Theories video covers that I didn't address here, consider checking out the video on the left about the events of Midnight Motorist, or the one on the right where I explain the timeline placement of Sister Location. Thank you so much for watching through to the end, and I hope you all don't get stabbed and have a nice day.
Yeah, I love that. Again, ID's Fantasy is amazing. If you're not subscribed, you should be. If you're not watching her channel, you should be. Just watch everyone, because diverse voices is what's going to lead people to a fuller appreciation of the story and the lore and the narrative and all that fun stuff. And again, I'm not just sitting here saying I watch ID's Fantasy. I've been watching ID's Fantasy since before she was on the GT live stream. When that happened, when she was, like, not invited, and then she made a play in her video and MatPat didn't invite her. Oh my god, that was, like, so happy. I'm like, oh my god, yes, my underdog story, the smaller channel I watch, won. Oh my god. But, like, I don't agree with all of her theories, right? Her Midnight Motorist theory, she thinks that Orange Guy is William, and I don't. I don't just believe what other FNAF theorists say, and I don't think that you should either, even if it's me. But yeah, obviously, subscribe to her. Ride Toast, Cyrus Squawks, Not Real Name, Not At All, Impulse7, Hyperdroid, everyone. Just watch all the big ones, and even some smaller ones, because some of the smaller people I found have some really good videos and input and ideas, even if I don't agree with all their conclusions. They're non-biased, right? Because they don't have the same experience with the community. They don't just necessarily agree with all the community consensus, but their non-biased and fresh perspectives, I think, is going to be necessary to solving a lot of stuff. So just watch everyone. Just watch everyone. It's great. I love this community. Thank you for watching my video. I have my Patreon linked in the description. I am looking for lots of money so I can quit my day job. There's no other way of putting it. I do always say that if you're a minor, if you're a student, if you have student loan debts, if you're ever struggling financially, do not donate to me. Do not donate to any YouTuber. If you need money, use your money. Keep your money. But that would really much help me be able to do YouTube full-time. I've been doing it for 6 years, almost. I'll get there eventually. Besides that, you can subscribe to me, Horror Homestead. I have another channel called GiBi's Good Idea, Bad Idea. I'm going to be posting longer videos on there. Those are not about horror things or FNAF things. And also, I will be covering non-FNAF things, horror-themed, on this channel. So I hope that when those come out, you do check them out. Besides that, I do have a now weekly Q&A series I'm doing. I'm working on multiple long videos, including one, it's not a reaction, it's like an essay about one of John FNAF's videos, and it is very long, so I don't know when that's going to come out, but I hope soon. And there's going to be more content from me in the future. If you like this, please like, favorite, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I will see you in the next video, and remember, Freddy stands for friendly, respectful, engagement, discourse, and discussion yields success. Bye. Also, we're still trying to think of a name for this guy.